That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there! There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla!
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that big.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Bass Angler Magazine podcast. BAM Pod Episode 2. I'm Joel Ead. We have a great show this go-around, thanks to some stellar guests. We got Fletcher Shryock, Chris Lane, and Ken Ma on deck today. And there's just tons of great info that I'm sure will help you catch more bass, because that is the goal here, if you didn't know. But before we get into it, quick reminder that the summer edition of BAM is shipping out soon. So if you want to subscribe, you can go to bassanglermag.com. And right now you can get $5 off your subscription by using the code RADIO. I've had a sneak peek at this issue, and there is a boatload of great stuff, good information. So I really recommend you check it out if you haven't. Kicking us off in this episode is MLF Bass Pro Tour angler Fletcher Shryock. Fletcher's had a great year so far. He's caught a lot of big bass. And we talk about how he kind of uses the gas pedal, as it were, while running the banks to up his chances during these tournaments. And, you know, he's run into a lot of big ones this year already doing that. So really great interview. It was a lot of fun. There was some times there where even he was like, you know, started to think about some things when it comes to just running fast and what that really means when you're in a tournament situation versus when you're practicing for a tournament. So it was a great time talking to Fletcher, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as I did. So let's get stuck right in. All right, Fletcher, coming to us straight from Chickamauga on the boat. Thank you so much for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
You know, so you're out there right now. We were kind of talking before we started this, looking around, poking around. I think it's well known for guys that follow MLF and follow you specifically. You like to fish the bank, you like to fish shallower things, vegetation, and you like to run. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today.
Yeah, this deal at Chickamauga, I'm trying to look at some stuff that's a little bit different. And it's just so I try to keep everything in my comfort zone. And I think that should help some of the anglers out there, you know, whenever they get into a pickle or a situation. I think it's very important more often than not to keep what you're, do what you're comfortable with. And here, because I've got 2 weeks to pre-practice, I'm kind of trying to venture out a little bit, but more than likely I'll be right back where I'm comfortable come tournament time, so.
Right on. So let's start with breaking down, shallow water vegetation type stuff. We've got it out here on the Delta. It's funny. I was just talking to Mark Lassane about I guess you spent a week with him, I think, out on the Delta.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he was on another podcast I do here on the West Coast. It's just bass reports here locally, but we were talking about the Delta, and he said fishing with you. It was funny because you asked him about a certain type of grass and some structure, and he said, no, I don't really catch them real well in that. And you went ahead, started fishing it, and pulled out a 5-pounder right in front of him. So I thought that was pretty funny.
I do remember that day. Yes, absolutely. I guess what I want to comment on that is, I guess whenever you really specialize in trying to get good at a few things, because I'm not good at a lot. Well, I like to, when you get good at a few certain things, you start to find new little ways to use that same technique, whether it be fishing a frog or flipping or whatever. You start to learn all the different ways you can keep that same rod, reel, bait in your hand and take it across the country and make it work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
When I was out there with Mark in California, like I said, I've learned to make a flipping stick work in most places across the country. So, whenever you see certain little nuances, a lot of people overlook, say, whenever they pick up a flipping stick, I've done it before and tried it before. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I definitely know what works and what doesn't work too, and that's important. But it takes, a lot of practice and years of knowing what does and doesn't, right? So, no, that was cool out there. I wish we'd go back to the Delta here soon again. I love it out there. I know did Ish win today?
So right now, the weigh-in's going on right now. So Lassane was in the top 10. Okay. Ish was in the top 10. Mark had a couple great days out there. So but we're going to know here shortly. I think
because Mark was in third, right?
After day 1, he was in third. After day 2, I want to say he was closer to sixth. I may be wrong about that.
Okay.
Ish was in first after day 2.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's in the Delta's fishing pretty well. I mean that's with a lot of tournament pressure they've had there. So
yeah, no, I know Ish called me last night and said he was leading, which I don't think anyone's surprised. I'm like, dang, there he goes again,
Yeah.
But no, I wish we would go. I hope we go out there soon. I love it out there. But to get back to the subject, I mean, yeah, as far as fishing that stuff, like I said, I think it just a lot of that comes with experience and really trying to dial into a couple of different techniques, which doesn't always mean you're going to catch bass all the time or be, well versed in a lot of things, but I think it helps in a lot of scenarios too. So
yeah, and so when you're fishing grass, or you're fishing toolies, or you're fishing structure, what are some of the things that set up to you that's like, man, that's perfect? Like that's cherry right there. I'm going to hit that. Are there some key things?
Yeah, there's key things definitely depending on the time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously that's the case all the time in fishing. But like if I'm looking at a set of toolies and it's pre-spawn, it's different than whenever they're spawning. Even post-spawn's different. Like I was, the one thing I know for sure around the spawn, and I think this might help people out a lot, and it may not always be the case, but it's a 90+% rule. When the bass go to spawning, they get out from underneath matted stuff and they get around stuff they can spawn around, which is, it's obviously stuff that the sunlight can penetrate, like the toolies. Mm-hmm. When they're not spawning, I like trash mats and things like that, hyacinth, whatever vegetation you have matted up in that stuff, as well as the toolies themselves. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
So I did want to throw that out there. Around the spawn, you're fishing, even if you're fishing around a bunch of matted vegetation, they move out of it to spawn and back into it pre and post spawn. Just keep that in mind. I think that'll help some people.
Well, great. And
I've got my butt kicked a couple times trying to make that stuff work, and really all I had to do was move my bait 1 foot to the left or to the right, and that was where they were at that point in time. So
yeah, no, and that's great information, and same can be said, I guess, for when you have dingier water. Those fish are going to be up shallower than they are deeper just because of the light penetration.
Yeah, that's another golden rule that I've learned. Like when you get dirty water under like the real heavy vegetation, even around it, a lot of times, for me, this is a 90% rule, kills the bite too. Mm-hmm. So everyone needs to kind of keep that in mind. Water clarity is such a big thing when they can't see well anyway, right? So
yeah. So as we're getting to, I know the country's all over the place right now as far as where they're at as far as spawning, post-spawn. I think we're kind of in the middle of everything if you want to take it as a general rule in the U.S. right now. But say where you are out in Chickamauga, what are you seeing as far as what these fish are doing, and then how have you kind of changed how you're attacking things based on what you're seeing on the water?
Well, right now out here, because I live in Gunnersville now,
mm-hmm.
It's been a really late year. It's been really cold. Like the last 3 or 4 nights, it's been 45 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Water temps has been low 60s yesterday in the morning. So I think these fish are behind, but we're fixing to go from cold to super hot really fast. So we might hit this event for a, sure enough, smackdown, beatdown, ledge fest tournament potentially. So that's another reason why I'm kind of looking out there a little bit now, even though they're not quite out there, because it's been so cold. But when they first show up, they'll eat anything that swims by them, right? Yeah. So I think it's kind of setting up that way, the way the weather's been in our region of the country anyway.
And so you like to run fast. I mean, you're an ex-motocross guy. Supercross or motocross?
Both. I rode a little bit of both.
Yeah. So you like to go fast, and that includes on your trolling motor. What is it about fishing fast that caters to the way that you fish?
Well, I think that, and this kind of goes with anyone that fishes any technique, the guy that can cover the most water in practice, I try to keep my boat in practice, depending on the situation, obviously, but I try to keep my boat moving at 1 to 1.5 miles an hour. That doesn't sound like much until you get up there and start flipping, pitching, casting, and rolling and being efficient at that speed. Mm-hmm. So you figure if I can average at least a mile per hour in a 10-hour day, I've covered 10 miles of water that I felt good about. If I only go half that speed and I slow way down, I only cover 5 miles. Well, maybe mile 8 through 10 of my day was my most productive stretches. if I don't go that fast, I never run across them, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to be efficient at going that fast. And I definitely won't say I'm the best at it, but I feel like the techniques that I do understand, I can hit my targets at that kind of speed. Obviously, then in the tournament, then I can slow down and I know what I need to do. But in practice, it's so imperative to be able to cover tons and tons of water like you see, a guy like Wheeler and Van Dam do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I feel like I do the same thing, yet I utilize obviously different techniques, but I feel like speed is definitely your friend. If you can, it takes practice to go that kind of speed though and still hit your marks, I guess. So,
Yeah, I mean, you're if you're covering that much water and you're going that fast, you have to cover, what's right in front of you, right? The obvious targets. So you're casting.
The obvious targets.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're casting a
I'm
lot
sorry to
more as
interrupt
well.
you.
No, you're casting a lot more. It's like there's a lot more that comes into it. It seems like you have to be pretty proficient at everything. Your game's got to be well-rounded to go that fast.
And you have to identify, you're right on everything you just said there, and you have to know, like, I have a lot of confidence in what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Where the high percentage places are. I'm not trying to hit every key little place in a mat. I'm not trying to hit every key place, every bush or whatever, but you just kind of, get confident, have enough confidence to know, hey, if I flip here, I'm out of here if I don't get a bite type of thing, and know that that's the right thing to do. So that's a lot of it too. And that just comes from experience and doing certain techniques a lot. Right. So,
mm-hmm. So what are some of the baits?
Yeah.
That you
All
like
very good points.
What do you like to throw when you're going that fast to cover a lot of water? I mean, there's a lot of different baits you can throw. What do you like to throw when you're really fishing fast and covering water to both find good water and eliminate bad water?
It varies a lot. Like this year, I've been utilizing the Yamamoto Fat Ico a lot and Green Pumpkin.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've caught 3 big bass awards. Had 3, at MLF 3 big bass deals now this year already.
Mm-hmm.
One at Red Crest for the day, and then heavy hitters, big fish of the event, and then Austin again. All come on a Fat Ica, light tungsten weight, pitching and flipping. But shoot, and I say that now, I might not catch a big bass again for the next 5 years, as random as that is. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of all depends. I like a flapping hog a lot, especially in the summer and the fall, Yamamoto flapping hog.
Yeah.
So it all just depends, It's hard to really sit here and say. I do switch things up quite a bit depending on scenarios. So really hard to go into great detail about all that in a, short time.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, man. So when do you find yourself slowing down? You tournament day? I still see you in tournaments. You're flying, and you do cover a lot of water still. When do you find yourself, whether it's in a tournament or in a practice or just having fun, when do you say, you know what, okay, time to slow down because of X, whether it be you're offshore, you're, whatever?
Yeah, I think it depends on how dialed in I am. And I almost wanted to say I appreciate when you said it seems like I'm always going fast, but it's almost not a good thing when you see me going that fast, because that means I really don't know where I should be, But it kind of goes back to the theory of, okay, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I really don't know what's going on. If I cover 5 miles in the tournament today, like I'm going to run across a few, kind of mentality. So it just depends. Like ideally, I want to be power pull up or power pull down, make my presentations, ease them up, roll to the next stretch, pull down. You know what I mean? Like I love to fish fast when I feel like I really am get on a deal. And I think back at tournaments that I've had that went well, I'm not going 100 miles an hour, but I went 100 miles an hour, or not 100, but 1 to 2 miles an hour to find those groups of fish. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. No.
And then once you're really on the deal, man, it's really the ideal scenario most of the time for me to have a good event is not fast at all, but you have to find those fish. So,
yeah, and I think it's a great clarification because watching you, I'm just like he likes to fish fast. I like to fish fast. I like to cover water, and that's just your style. But if you do think about it, and it's great that I've heard it straight from you that a lot of that is just it's a game of percentages, right?
Exactly. When you stop and think about, and I'm asking you this now, I'm the one asking you the question, are your better tournaments, are they usually the ones that you're flying around and hitting 20 places and then check in, or is it usually those better events where you had maybe 1 or 2 or 3 places and you slowed down and was more methodical?
No, absolutely. If I'm running around everywhere, things are going bad. And that's just the general rule. And so, but the thing is, that's me. That's just, That's just little old me. When I see Fletcher Shryock out there who's putting up these big numbers, like you said, you're catching all these big bass. When I see, I'm like, man, he's got something. There's something going on here. Fish faster all the time.
No, I appreciate that, but no, I'll be honest, dude. Usually when I do decent, I'm running around hitting 20 places. Get a top 20 or some, a top 30, whatever, stuff like that. But like my better tournaments, looking back at all of just about all of them, have never come that way. I've been able to string a lot of decent finishes together, but never had real good events running around.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I'd never really stopped and thought about that until we're going into detail into this whole conversation. So I'm learning something too, I guess. I just never stopped to think about it, And you obviously agreed with that too when you stop and think. So yeah, obviously learn how to fish fast, learn how to cover water effectively, efficiently, accurately. But then come derby time, you better understand how to break down what you found and all that mess, and be willing to hunker down too.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think
unless you're in scramble mode, and then it's all
exactly.
It's what it is. You got to salvage something, right?
Well, with places in like Florida or the Delta, I can go around all day, and I can just all around. I'm not in Florida, but obviously the Delta for me. But if you're out there, there's so much good looking water, and I think it's one of the biggest questions that I talk to people, and that guys that are new maybe or not really good at breaking down the vegetation stuff and the shallower water fishing is everything looks good. So you almost feel like you have to cover as much as you can, because it's just like, how do you know where they're going to be when it all looks so good?
That's exactly goes back to what we're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's hard to answer that question though, right?
What's that?
It's hard to answer that question though, right? I mean, it's hard for me to ask that
Very
question
hard,
to you and be like, where do we go when all of it looks good?
I think the best way, and I get that question a lot, how do you guys find all this stuff in a couple of days or whatever? But honestly, man, it just comes, and I don't mean to be redundant, but it comes back to what we're talking about pretty much. Like a lot of times when I go to a lake, like here at Chick even or whatever, like I know all the options available to me, but I don't know what kind of deal they're going to be on. Mm-hmm. So the faster I can move around and get a vibe of what's going on, I feel like over time, over the years, I've gotten a lot better at getting the vibe early on than what I did years back. Mm-hmm. Like now I can kind of go to a place and fish docks for an hour and kind of be like, and then I fish Main River docks, back to pocket docks. I kind of know what to check. And I'm like, this sucks. And I'm off to something else kind of thing, if that makes sense, right? Being able to process that, quicker helps a lot too. But yeah, the biggest thing is being able to cover that water, and then obviously having the experience too to know. But if I promise you this, for the guys that listen, I know what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people out here, I believe. Mm-hmm. Obviously,
that's the key.
I think if a guy can learn how to, yeah, right. So I think if a guy can learn a handful of techniques that he likes to do, that he has a lot of confidence in, and learn how to do it fast and effectively and efficiently, accurately, all that stuff, and roll and cover a lot of water, he's going to catch them, in time. Mm-hmm. Might not happen overnight, but in time, and that whole process will become, maybe if they never thought about fishing that way for practice or whatever, that whole process will become easier in the years to come, I think, personally.
That's great advice, man. And all of this, it's cool how we kind of been able to bring it all back. And like you said, I was thinking about some things, and it's like, oh, well, maybe that's why he's doing that at that point on day 3 or whatever, where, he's trying to make that cut. Maybe that's why he's going so fast. So I'm going to look at it a little differently now. But.
Well, Fletch just dropped everything, and he's flying down the bank somewhere trying to figure something out. That's probably what you're used to seeing.
No.
Which is me 75% of the time.
I mean, you've done like you said, you've caught some big fish. You're making money that way, and I think you've done pretty well this year. But like I said, I really enjoy watching you. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, having you on here is just really cool for me. So, and I think for everybody else too. So I really appreciate it. And I got one more question for you, and something I go back to with everybody.
No, I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Go ahead.
So, colors. When it comes to colors, are you one of those people that live and die by a color, or are you more worried about the action of your bait?
So the action thing, actually, I want to talk about the action first, and the color thing's real easy. But the action thing, I've learned, I'm not real big on the actual action of a bait, especially I'm just talking a flipping bait, for instance. Mm-hmm. So like, look at a Senko. It doesn't have any paddles. It doesn't have anything. Mm-hmm. It's just got a real erratic shimmy and an erratic fall that they cannot stand. Mm-hmm. Fat Ike is the same way. I don't really like a lot of action, like appendages, unless you're like throwing a swim jig or something, right? Like then you want to have some action. But a lot of times when I'm talking flipping stuff, I want a bait that glides around, like the Yamamoto Sancho glides around real well.
Oh yeah.
On a light tungsten weight. Now, when I'm punching a flapping hog, which is really, my main deal with that bait, it's kind of hard to get a bait to glide around with an ounce or ounce and a half weight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But like a lot of times less action is more. As far as the action, that's me in a lot of ways. And then on the color deal, man, it goes right back to being redundant for the fifth time today. I believe it's more about getting in the right place, getting around a group of fish than it has really anything to do with the color. I keep it really simple, black, blue, and like a green pumpkin stuff for the most part. Unless, you're at someplace like I am here at Chick, I know I'm going to have to probably have a pink worm or whatever, on a drop shot if I catch them all. You know what I mean? There's specific little things here and there that you're going to have to do. But for the most part, I believe it's more about getting around the fish, covering water, finding them, than it is about color or anything like that. Obviously, dirty water, black and blue, cleaner water, green pumpkin. And then if you're around bluegill or you see bluegill beds, then, you can go to a spray grass kind of color. You know what I mean? Like, but generally speaking, I think you can go with those two colors about anywhere in the country and get a rough start. And if you really want to tweak it from there, then you can, springtime, maybe a little bit of green pumpkin red, something like that, pre-spawn. Obviously that's a good color, but I think at the end of the day, if you're around them, they're going to eat it,
That's great. To the point, simple. You're actually a pretty simple dude, Fletcher. I like that. I mean, straight to the point.
I appreciate that.
No, I mean, and honestly,
my friend over here is looking at me right now like you're crazy, but no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I took up enough of your practice time, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Thank you so much. It means a lot to have me on the show.
All right, great. Fletcher, good luck on the upcoming tournament.
Okay, sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Get outdoors and spend some time in your lab, because in theirs, at Fish Lab, they learn by doing. The water is their lab and they love doing research. Fish Lab knows there's a reason when a lure works, and that angling is part art and part science. It's a puzzle where the pieces constantly change, sometimes in our favor, sometimes not. But by applying decades of experience, bold creativity, a little patience, and a lot of time on the water, we can better the odds of finding the successful formula that catches you more fish. Fish Lab lures are realistic, scientifically accurate, meticulously crafted, and designed for one purpose: to catch more and bigger fish. Straight out of the lab, Fish Lab has you covered with a full line of hard baits, swim baits, glide baits, wake baits, soft weedless swim baits, and bluegill baits. The badass rattle toad, plus a line full of saltwater baits. Check them out at your favorite tackle dealer or online at fishlabtackle.com, and follow on Instagram at fishlabtackle. The science behind the strike, Fish Lab.
Dude, what a cool guy. Even with some technical issues that we had, he was out there on the lake. During the interview, he didn't miss a step. There was some cool stuff that we kind of teased out of that interview. If you guys caught that, that should help you a lot. So I'm stoked with that one. And just be careful out there speeding on that trolling motor now that you know how to cover that water the way Fletcher does. Thanks, Fletcher. Now, this next guy is probably well known to everyone, especially if you were following, professional tournament fishing in 2012, which is when he won a little thing called the Bassmaster Classic. Chris Lane. Now, he came on, gave us a little bit of his time, and we discussed his move from the Elites to MLF's Bass Pro Tour and how he had to kind of change the way he thought and the way he fished competitively with this new format. We also snuck a little bit of topwater knowledge in there because he is known as a topwater guy. So let's take a listen. All right, everybody, we got Chris Lane on the phone from the pontoon boat with the family joining us here. Thanks so much, Chris.
Oh, man, actually, it's a Regency pontoon boat. You can actually get those at Bass Pro Shops if you want.
And there you go. We got the Bass Pro Shop sponsored angler. Man, you've done a lot in your career. You won the Classic in 2012. You're now fishing the Bass Pro Tour. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've maybe adjusted the way you fish? Have you had to change things up a little bit, going from that 5-fish format to this format you're fishing now?
Oh yeah, well it's a mental game, now, because the score, what's going on. It's intense, and the adjustments that you have to make are to be able to adjust to the score tracker and adjust what you're doing may not be the best thing, to where knowing the score and having a time that you're set at when you have to stop fishing makes all the difference in the world. True professional sport at this format.
No, and I will say, as someone who watches it, I've been watching bass fishing tournaments pretty much my whole life, but there's something really exciting as a viewer, being able to see that score tracker and as they move around and you get to see everybody fishing. It's really exciting to watch. So I can only imagine what it's like to compete.
Oh my gosh, it'll shave a few years off my life, I can promise you. I can only imagine, just like Bobby just finishing second out there at Travis, losing by 2 ounces and catching one right at the end that was 2 ounces short, and then time is up. That's just the game now, It's absolutely crazy how intense it is as an angler, but how enjoyable it is as a fan to watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, and the thing is, it's always kind of changing too. I mean, it's been morphing, at first it was 1-pounders. Now it's up to 2-pounders pretty much on every lake. Is that the case now? Pretty much every stage is 2-pounders only, right?
Well, we've actually changed that a little bit due to the science and due to conservation. We've adjusted it to where what we have, it's called a minimum weight system that has been put in place. Steve with the conservation department of Major League Fishing, along with an angler and a committee, 3 anglers and a committee with MLF, they actually will choose the weight. Our goal is to fish for the 50% of the, bass that are over, 1.5 pounds, 50% of the fish in the lake. I want to make sure I say that right, of the up standard. So at Travis, it was 1.8. At Harris Chain, it will be 1.8. When we go to St. Lawrence, it could be 3 pounds. So I like the system. The system works. So I look forward to that moving forward.
And there's a lot of, and it is very conservation minded. I was watching as I was getting ready for this interview with you. I was watching what they call the drainage pipe run back in Eufaula in 2020, and you're catching anywhere from 2 to 5 pounders, and you're just having a blast. And you can tell that you're really passionate about getting these fish back. These fish were pre-spawn. You don't got to carry them around in your boat all day, and you're really passionate about that.
Oh yeah, especially when they're full of eggs, and you can let them go, but at the same time, you got the big 5s, the 5-fish limit. It's good too, but I see the trend moving towards, Major League Fishing. The Bass Pro Tour it's just the most intense game on the planet right now when it comes to actual fishing a tournament.
Mm-hmm. And aside from the mental game you talked about, fishing this way, have there been things that you've had to do as far as working on parts of your game that maybe you wouldn't have had to do if you stayed with the 5-fish limit format?
Oh, absolutely. I think the number one key is just to continue to be organized. You need to know, because literally seconds can cost you a cut. Seconds can cost you a win. And I think that's the most important thing about Major League Fishing is being organized to where if you need to grab a certain bait that may catch you that last fish to get you in or to win, you better have that bait and you better know where it's at, because 30 seconds can be the difference between first and second place.
And we've seen that, and just watching over the last few years, we've seen that happen, and it's pretty wild. I mean, it's fair to say you're described as, a shallow water, top water specialist. I mean, that's when I'm watching you fish, that's what I see you doing. That's what it seems like you enjoy doing the most.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite ways to fish. And, it's just one of those things that it's like high impact. When you get that bite, it's you're short line. It's not like you got to fight it from a long way in. You get to fight that fish for about just a few minutes to get it in. And sometimes you break off. Sometimes they tie you down in the skunk. But when you get them in, it's a gratifying feeling.
So what is it when we're coming up on this time of year where it's starting to get warm? You're going to start throwing that top water a lot more. You're going to maybe throw the, subsurface stuff for like shallow swim baits, things like that. When do you choose between a subsurface, and we're talking moving baits, when do you choose between a subsurface, a wake style, or a full-on top water moving bait as we get into these warmer months?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the wake bait kind of goes away, as the water warms up. Right now I'll be throwing a lane changer or top notch, but, BD Baits has come out with a brand new swim bait that's a subtle tail that's just really, really good. But at the same time, when you're sitting there and you're fishing and the top water bite's not happening, they're not chasing a swim bait like you want them to. I'll just go to the Sticko from Bass Pro Shops. I got them by the 100 pounds because it's just such a great bait to where you just put it on, you fire it out there, and you just work it back real slow. So, you kind of let the fish tell you what to do.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the lane changer. That's your bait that you helped design River to Sea. What would you classify that as? It seems to me more of a finesse type of topwater, if you could call it that.
Oh, absolutely. Shallow water, or no wind is probably one of the biggest signs to throw that bait when it's slick, calm. It's just, finesse style topwater. It's not like you're working it real hard or anything.
And it's just a steady retrieve.
Yes, sir.
Right on. Yeah, no, those are really neat. I haven't had a chance to fish them yet, but I know that you're a big fan of the Whopper Plopper. There's some great videos online of you fishing that thing and having a lot of success. So I love fishing that.
Yeah, the lane changer's more of a twitch, let it sit, twitch, great Whopper Plopper follow-up bait.
Perfect. So when you talk about the wake bait, it's something that not a lot of guys talk about. As you were saying, as it starts to warm up, the wake bait kind of goes away. But when do you pull out the wake bait? It seems to be a more specialized topwater type approach, not really.
It's mainly in the fall time of the year or early spring when the fish are, when the bait fish are a little bit slow. Right now, they're bait fish are pretty quick. The water's warming; they got plenty of action.
Man, it sure is fun watching you fish. I'm a big fan. And having you come on here has been really neat.
Man, I really appreciate you guys allowing us to be on here, and looking forward to the rest of the year, and just appreciate all you guys do.
All right, before I let you go, I always have one last question, and it's based on color, because color is such a huge thing in the bass fishing world, and sometimes that's more for the fishermen than the fish. So I want to ask you, focused on more of a topwater, because that's what we've been talking about. How important are colors to you? What's kind of your color theory when it comes to topwater fishing?
Oh man, that's such an easy question to answer. Not like the rest of them, but that one, that's easy to answer. You want to match the hatch. That's the number one question we get from high school, college kids, all around. It doesn't matter when do you know what to throw? And, you match the hatch. If they're feeding on brim, you're throwing a dark color. If they're feeding on shad, you're throwing a light color.
Simple as that. Hey, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on.
All right, man. Thank you, guys.
All right. Good luck at Czech, huh?
All right. Appreciate it.
At Ford Fairfield, we'll make your ownership experience simple. Our simple price, simple process is designed to save you time by eliminating the back and forth. That means you'll always get our very best highly competitive offer right up front. No games, no gimmicks. Our goal? To provide you with an exceptional experience. Stop by or book your appointment today. Ford Fairfield. Simple price, simple process.
Chris Lane, ladies and gentlemen. Topwater season is upon us. And so you all need to get out there, throw the frog, throw the plopper, throw the buzzbait, throw the spook, and check out that lane changer. Stick a big one, because now's the time to do it. Big thanks, Chris. Thank you. To wrap things up in this one, we have our West Coast Spotlight. And in this episode, the left coastie we focused on is Wild West Apex angler Ken Ma. Ken's got some really great insights on all kinds of things when it comes to fishing. But in this interview, we really kind of just focused on how to progress in tournament fishing and some really helpful guidelines for co-anglers and pros alike when you're fishing in a pro-co type of format. So let's check it out. Here he is. In this episode's West Coast Spotlight, we got Mr. Ken Ma. Ken, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Joel. It's a pleasure.
Great, man. You know, I was thinking about who I wanted to have on next, and after talking to Mark and some other people, you know, your name comes up a lot in the West Coast circuits. You know, you're a well-respected angler, and so I kind of wanted you to come on and talk to us about kind of how you got into tournament fishing, and then impart some of your knowledge of what you learned over the years to make other people successful in whatever level of tournament angling they're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, I started off basically team fishing, and you know, when I started off team fishing, there weren't a bunch of different divisions like Future Pro and BBT, and you know, back in the day it was the Western Rookie League when that first started. So I'd take my lumps against, you know, the people at the time that were winning everything, you know, guys like Leroy Bertolero and Danny Peluso and Mike Reynolds and, Bobby Barrett, Gary Dobbins, you know, and I don't mean to name drop these guys, but that's the caliber of fishermen that you had to fish against on a Saturday. You know, and, I look back and, you know, I think there's a few ways to learn, right? You can learn with training wheels or you can learn by fire. And, and, you know, back then there were, you know, it was learn by fire, you know, and, you either, you know, sank or swim, and there, it was, you know, I liked it because I think it accelerated, my learning, because, you know, you couldn't have a bad execution on one fish and win. You know, that's how heightened it is. You know, it's when you're fishing against, you know, a high caliber of angler, you know, you can't have any lapses in execution, decisions, and judgment.
You're talking about losing fish and, tackle issues, stuff like that.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it's not just about the lost fish. It's about, you know, where you focus, where you sleep at the wheel, where you, was your boat in the right position? You know, is your tackle right? I mean, there's so much more to it than just a lost fish. You know, everybody always laments over a fish that's lost, but, you know, could you have prevented it? And, you know, when you're fishing against, you know, what I would say, whatever the best is in your arena or area, it brings out the best in you. You know, I mean, it either brings out the best in you or you fold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So back then, you know, it was a lot of team fishing. You know, and I fished teams for a long time, probably too long. I mean, that's what I would tell anglers now that are getting into it. You know, I should have, you know, I think I fished my first Pro-Am event. I want to say I fished teams for probably 7, 8. I mean, I've been fishing teams even up till now, but initially when I first started, you know, I started in teams, and you know, the thing with teams is you always have a crutch. You can always, kind of lean back on somebody else or even blame somebody else for not doing well. You know, and that's what I love about fishing non-shared weight Pro-Ams is, you know, you don't catch them. There's nobody to look at except yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, so, but my point that I was going to make is that, you know, I look back at my career and I actually feel that, you know, I didn't move to that next level as soon as I probably should have.
Why would you say that is?
I think some of it is just unsure, lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's all those things, comfort. There had been, from BBT and Future Pro, they've been around, let's just say for at least a decade, right? I think Future Pro's been around probably for longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you look at some of the anglers that actually advanced out of there, that didn't stay there, there's been some tremendous anglers that have come from those fields, that have come into, the open teams and then, into, whether it's One Bass or Wild West or now Apex, like a guy like Travis Huckabee, for instance, he cut his teeth at the Future Pro level,
mm-hmm.
And then he progressively moved higher and higher and higher. And that's kind of the blueprint for, I would say for anglers that want to fish at the highest level, he's now competing in Apex. That's kind of the blueprint to do that. And I think the sooner, I would encourage always people that whenever you're starting to think about or feel like you want to kind of whatever that next level is that you're thinking about, go sooner than later is my take.
Yeah.
So if
it's that sink or swim mentality, right? I mean, at a certain point, even if you've spent a lot of time and you have kind of done the training wheel thing, at a certain point, you're going to be thrown in the deep end with the big boys and you're going to have to swim.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would say. For me looking back, I would just say at almost at every level, I look back and say, oh gosh, I wish I would have went and started fishing Pro-Am sooner. And, or I wish I would have went and fished FLW sooner, So yeah, I think that all that plays into it. But I think for most people, like let's say you've been fishing teams for 4 or 5 years, and on every team, and I say this when I do seminars, on every team, there's a Jordan and a Pippin, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes on that same team, each other really doesn't know their role. Both of them think they're Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that analogy because, if you're the Pippin on that team, there's nothing wrong with being on a successful team, but you really never know whether or not you're capable of being Jordan until you put yourself in that situation to make those decisions and to execute on your game plan. If you're fishing teams now and, you want to say fish Pro-Ams, I think that is a great mix. You should always be somewhere you're comfortable, so to speak, and then go to somewhere where you're not comfortable. Because when we're not comfortable in life, that's typically where we're having to learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you're fishing BBT or Future Pro and you're thinking about wanting to learn more about fishing, you can get into Wild West Pro-Ams. You can get into like One Bass, and I think that's where people differ. Like One Bass has a great format. It's a shared weight format. And then Wild West has a non-shared weight format. And then, MLF now also has a non-shared weight format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people, when they look at the shared and non-shared weight format, early on, when they first make that step, they want to lean toward that shared weight format. And what I caution anglers on is, well, when you're in a shared weight format, you don't get to make fishing decisions as easily as you would in a non-shared weight format. So yeah, is it harder to catch your own 5 fish in the back of my boat? Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you can decide what bait to throw, how to throw it, when to throw it. So you're actually getting better on your own. When you fish behind somebody great, it only makes you better.
Yeah. And that you hit on a great point there. I mean, not only in that format are you, if you get lucky enough to be to draw a really, really good angler, not only are you going to be fishing in an area where he's probably done a lot of research, there's probably some fish there, and you can learn, you can watch that person, you can learn a lot from him. But like you said, at the same time, you can put your own spin on things. You can fish what you're comfortable with, what you have confidence in. And like you said, I think that would that's just a recipe for success, for making you a better angler.
Yeah. And again, as long as you keep your perspective, or your priorities in line, it's not always about the result. The result doesn't always measure the level of your success.
Mm-hmm.
So if you enter a Pro-Am event and it's a non-shared weight because you want to make your own decisions and kind of control some of your own destiny, you also have to keep in perspective why you entered to begin with, right? But what happens is when you put an entry fee in, that money clouds many people's objectives and judgments.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that goes for the pro and the co side. But if you get into it, so like in a Wild West or a One Bass, you pay somewhere between, let's just say, $400 and $600. You're in the One Bass, you're guaranteed, most of the formats you're guaranteed 3 days. And in Wild West, you're guaranteed 2 days, and if you make the top 10, you're guaranteed a third day.
Mm-hmm.
So for, let's say, $400 to $600, you can't hire a guide nowadays for under $300.
Nope. And I was going to say the same thing. Like you get to go out there with a hammer, and you get to go in places where he probably knows there's fish, and you get a chance to show out maybe and win some money. But if not, like you said, man, you can't hire a guide for that. So
yeah, and it's the learning aspect. So as long as somebody that's kind of looking to move into that next level, it's the learning aspect that you have to keep at the epitome of why you entered to begin with. And then if you happen to do well in the tournament, you happen to get paid, that's just kind of like the gravy or the cherry on top of your learning experience.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. I mean, it's great to think of it that way. And I don't even think I've really thought about it that way, but that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I would, use another angler that's, he's hugely well known now, but not when he started, like Justin Lucas, he's a Bassmaster Angler of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
He's won 3 or 4 or 5, major events now in his young career. And I remember when he was fishing out here, him and his grandfather fished Future Pro first.
Mm-hmm.
Then he started fishing teams, and then he jumped in the back of the then Stren series, and he was fishing the back of the boat. Probably one of the top 10 greatest co-anglers that our region has ever seen. I think he won 4 or 5 boats in the back of the boat here.
That's crazy.
Right. But he had a blueprint and a plan for where he was going. So, I don't want to get into his accolades, but this is what I want to tell. And when I say young people, it's not young in age, it's young in experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cause you could be any age and be, a Future Pro angler or a BBT angler or anything like that. But whenever Justin, and when you look back at the blueprint of his career, whenever he was at one level doing something, he also had the other half of them at the next level doing something else. Right. So when he was fishing Future Pro, he was fishing back of the boat on the Stren series, which is now the Toyota series. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then when he had success at the Co-Angler Toyota series, he moved up to the front of the Toyota series and then went to the back of the boat in the FLW tours, the Forest Wood Cup series. Right. Okay. So he was always progressing, and he was at 2 places at one time because ultimately he knew he wanted to fish at the highest level.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a perfect plan to get there. I mean, obviously look at him, right? Because even when he went to the FLW tour, and then he stopped fishing regionally, he spent 3 or 4 years at the FLW tour, and then he progressed to the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then he's been fishing, you know, at the top of his game probably now for the last 6 to 8 or 9 years.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I'd never known that he was doing both of those at once, but I mean, it makes sense. The
Yeah,
guys
and
as
it's a
tenacious as
great,
they come.
yeah. And it's a great blueprint for people to follow. You know, it's here. You know, we have that.
Yeah,
You know,
it's interesting to look at what we have here in the West, and we don't have a lot of the big, you know, the big name tournaments come through really anymore. But man, there's a lot of opportunity to fish competitively out here with really, really good anglers, yourself included. But the guys on the Apex, and I mean, you look at someone like Tai Ao, who we had on last week or 2 weeks ago on this podcast, and he gave us a great rundown on kind of how he's progressed. And
right.
And look at him now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you know, you look at guys. You know, there's many anglers. You know, at the Apex level. You know, you take a guy like Jeff Michaels. You know, Greg Gutierrez. You know, myself or Joe Uribe. You know, these anglers could easily. Well, I wouldn't say nothing's easily, but these caliber of anglers. You know. Like Greg has fished on the Elite Series for, you know, 6, 7, 8 years, you know, and he's won everything that there is to win out here just about. And, you know, so the talent level is here and it's starting to finally be assembled into one field, you know, because, you know, you have to qualify to get there. So there's not, you know, moving forward, you know, there's not going to be a pass for you to get here. You're going to have to perform on the AOI points level in order to get into the field.
And that's where the Apex comes in now, which is a new thing started this year, which is really exciting, cool format. Real quick, if we can we talk a little bit about once guys, you know, we've talked about this, they're like, oh man, I'm sold, I want to go do this. What are some guidelines you'd give to guys that want to fish the back of a boat as far as etiquette, as far as what they need to know and what they should look out for maybe in their pros?
Yeah. So I would say I'll try to, and if I get sidetracked, you know, refocus me, but
no problem.
You know, I'll talk about it from the co-angler side because I've had a lot of co-anglers in my boat. And I also want to talk about from the pro side because, you know, that doesn't get talked about enough. But from the co-angler side first, I think that, you know, for someone to be, quote, ready to kind of move to that next level, I would say minimally they need to have a good hold of their equipment. You know, and what I mean by that is you know, they need to have the right number of rods and reels. They need to be able to handle that equipment. You know, they need to be able to tie knots and re-spool things and basically be self-sufficient. That would be a very kind of a synergistic way of saying for a co-angler, you know, meaning, you know, you're not bringing a hand truck or a wheelbarrow to my boat and you're unloading equipment in. You know, you do need to be compact, efficient, but also self-sufficient. I think those things.
I'm sorry. How many rods is too many?
Well, there's some circuits that don't limit rods. I would say that of all the co-anglers that have ever done well fishing behind me, they are very minimalist. They're very efficient, and they keep things very simple. So if I had to put a number on, and I'm not putting a number based on my view of how many rods I want on the boat. I'm putting that number based on success of anglers that I've seen in my boat over, you know, the past few decades.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would say the majority of the co-anglers that do well, they have a couple of traits that they have all demonstrated. Okay. So I would say anywhere from 5 to 7, depending on where you're going, 5 to 7, maybe 8 rods. You know, most of the co-anglers that when they were allowed to bring more, you know, as many rods as they want, if they brought 15, 16, 17 rods, they didn't do well. You know, same thing with the co-angler that maybe only brought 2 rods.
Yeah.
You know, but one thing that all those successful co-anglers that did well, that continue to do well to this day. You know, you take a guy like Jack Farage. Okay, I mean, he's won 5, 6, maybe 7 boats in the back. You know, Justin Lucas drew me one time when I was in the front and he was in the back. There was a guy named Pat Wilson. You know, all these guys that, you know, Rick Grover is actually a really good co-angler now in today's day. And when I take the characteristics of like all those names that I named, not only are they, you know, like I said, they're efficient, they can handle their tackle, but they fish the water that's in front of them. Like out of all 5 of those names, you know, they never casted in the front of the boat. You know, they fished what was in front of them. They kept the bait wet. They fished hard. You know, most of them are very quiet also, you know, and I don't mean not just talkative, but moving around the boat. They're very quiet. They understand what we're trying to accomplish individually together.
Absolutely.
You know, so those characteristics, you know, just you know, fishing what's given to you, fishing hard, keeping things simple, you know, and being efficient. These are all like highly desirable traits, you know, when you're fishing co-angler.
These are the things that I think about, you know, as someone who's only ever fished team events at lower levels. It's and who's thought about doing this before, and I know a lot of other guys that I know have thought about it. There's a lot of questions and there's a lot of uncertainty, not just because it's like, oh, am I good enough? But it's, I don't want to go out there and make a fool of myself. I think a lot of guys are like a little reticent, you know? I mean, they're self-conscious. They want to go out there and do it the right way.
Yeah. And I would tell anybody that's on the fence about it, shared weight or not, you know, you pick whichever one that you think is best for you. But I would tell people that greater than 95% of the time, you're going to draw somebody that is a good person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean by, you know, if you're a co-angler and you draw a pro, you know, you're going to draw somebody that he or she is just a good person. You know, most of the pros want their co's to catch fish. Most of them also don't want to get beat by their co-angler either. But you know, most of them, you know, do you hear some horror stories from time to time? Absolutely. But you can't let that dictate you not trying to do something, you know, because you know, I like I said, I think that there's a lot more good that happens. I would tell co-anglers too that, you know, like a lot of co-anglers, you know, I'm very flattered, but a lot of times, you know, when a co-angler draws me, they're really excited about it.
Yeah.
Which is great, right? I mean, you know, it speaks to my reputation, but a lot of times, you know, because I'm a very bank oriented angler, you know, I like to power fish. I like to throw reaction baits. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look historically at my co-anglers, you know, most of the time my co-anglers, they don't do that well. You know, and it's not because I'm backseating them, because I don't. It's just my style of fishing.
Yeah,
you know,
and that is something that you have to know how to do. If you've got someone up front that's power fishing like that, you really do have to know how to do that effectively, because obviously they don't want to cast up on you, but a lot of times when you're moving that fast, what are your thoughts on that? Is it tougher fishing with you because of the way you? I mean, obviously, is that what you were getting at?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's not just me. I mean, there's other people like me also. You know, you take a guy like Nick Salvucci or Jared Lintner. You know, they a lot of times, you know, they got their trolling motor on, you know, 40 and 50, mm-hmm. and they're trucking down the bank. And if you're trying to throw a weightless Cinco, it may never hit the bottom by the time it hits your feet.
No, and I think that's also a great learning experience though, because it's gonna. And I tell this to my partner, because I do like to go fast. He likes to throw the jig slow and pull along the bottom. I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry. This is what we're doing right now. Like I'm gonna be going fast. I'm gonna be throwing this spinner bait. I'm gonna be throwing this jerk bait. We're moving. We're covering water. And do you tell your co-angler, like, hey, try something else, pick up something else, maybe join the reaction party, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. It also depends on the conditions and what else is going on. But when you see, and this is a perfect example of if you're fishing teams and you decide to fish co-angler, and you draw, let's say, we're on Delta or Clear Lake and you draw, me, Jeff Michaels, and Jared Lintner in 3 days. I mean, it's like, it would like be like any co-angler would be like, oh my God, that I should play the lottery. Right. Right. And again, I'm not bragging, but there's many other anglers that you would love to draw,
Oh yeah.
But you draw that, you take that draw and, that angler result wise may not end up having a good result, but the lessons, as long as he or she keeps, I remember what I said a few minutes ago, that you keep your priorities in order. And if your first priority is to have fun, number one, and two is to learn, regardless of how your result ended up, how can you not learn from 3 people like that?
It's impossible.
Right?
If you're paying attention, it's impossible.
Correct. 100%. And I take the attitude also. I mean, I can learn from my co-anglers as well. I definitely never come across, and I don't know everything in life. I ask questions all the time. I try things and fail all the time in life. But that perspective keeps me learning and keeps me out of being in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would encourage people to do. If you're thinking about doing it, might you, draw somebody that you wish you would have drew somebody else? Yeah, it might happen. But I would still say that 90 or 95% of the time, you're still going to have a pleasurable day, because overall there are tremendous people who hunt and fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a group of people that are just wholesome and for the most part, really good people.
I agree.
So, and I touched on it also, I touched on the co-angler side and I touched on the pro side, the same thing, here, unfortunately, up until now with Apex, and Apex doesn't have co-anglers obviously, but, up until now, the term pro is used very loosely, because really what makes somebody a pro in a pro-am is just who was able to afford the entry fee. Right.
Yeah.
And there are some pros that, they pay the entry fee, and they're ill prepared, whether it's with their equipment, whether they practiced, if they use their practice period properly, so what's expected of the co-angler, there should also be a minimum expectation, of the pro, because the co has money on the line as well, that the pro should be like, oh, hey, my live wells are working properly, my boat's functioning. And I don't mean that the pro needs to have a new boat. Just because you have a new boat doesn't mean you're going to have problems. You're still going to have problems. But whatever piece of equipment you are using, it should be maintained in a adequate, level to where, your co-angler that paid your $400 or $600 is also not high and dry because you got a bad battery and it was going bad and you didn't want to get a new battery before the tournament started.
Yeah, that's rough. It's something that's also something else that you just don't think about. You think that these guys are going to be just as gung-ho and just as dialed in as anyone would be if they're taking this seriously as a co-angler. You would think that the pro is going to be far and above. Like, he's going to be even more worried about, his equipment and making sure he's dialed in. So I would never even think about that, but that's valid.
It is. And obviously, the co-angler can't so much like do anything about it. And, I'm just talking to people who might be moving to that level, who are also at that level, who might be listening. There's an obligatory expectation of the pro also, to at least minimally ensure that they're doing what they need to do as well.
It's your first time and you're out there with somebody who maybe it's their first time being a pro and they're out there with a boat that's just like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to happen, and I would encourage co-anglers to not take that snapshot or that first experience as an indicator of all experiences. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's really not that way. I mean, we have some quote career co-anglers some of them I named, like Roy Dismangles is another one who's won, 4 or 5 boats in the back of the boat over his career, and there are people out there, I mentioned Jack Farage, for them, it fits their family, it fits their budget, it fits everything that they need, that they want to do right now in their life, and at some point if and when it's right and if it's in their goals, they might move to the front of the boat at some point. So if you had a guy like that on, a Roy Dismangles or a Jack Farage, and actually had them talk about their experiences, I'm sure they would tell you a lot of eye-opening times where they caught the biggest bag of the tournament but had a horrible day because of what pro they were paired with, and then vice versa. I think if you asked them, well, can you talk about a time where you didn't do well, but you had a blast, and because like those two men, they're highly competitive, and they want to win every time, because actually I've had the pleasure of fishing with both of them, and but there are also a lot alike in how they attack what they're fishing. I don't have a doubt that either one of them, could, when they're ready, could move up to the front, and after somewhat of a learning curve, can adapt and hold their own at the front. And they learn that because they fish the back.
What a great insight. I mean, Ken, there's a reason why you give seminars, Ken. I mean, there's a lot of great, I really appreciate you coming on here, because this has just been really eye-opening for me, and I think a lot of people are really going to appreciate this.
Yeah, I would just, I want to encourage people, the pro-ams need co-anglers, co-anglers, sometimes are sometimes they're almost underappreciated. Some circuits, the co-anglers are required. You fish a shared weight format, without a co-angler, that pro is at a handicap because, the pro doesn't have another fishing rod in the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those organizations have to pair those pros and co's together, and co-anglers, I always say this, co-anglers, sometimes they buy all the same stuff the pros do or more.
Oh, for sure.
So they're consumers just like anybody else is. So being able to market and provide a platform to co-anglers is just as important as it is to provide that platform or cater to pros.
That's great stuff, Ken, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I've got one more question for you, and it's a question that I ask everybody. And when it comes to colors, who cares about colors more in a fishing bait? The fish or the fisherman?
So I always have this saying that I tell people, because people ask me that. That's one of probably the most commonly asked questions. So before I answer the how I pick colors, because it's a very simple formula that I use to pick colors for any body of water I go to. But this is what I will tell people before I answer that question is, if it matters to you, it matters.
There you go.
Okay. That is the best way that I can say it. If you look at a punch skirt, or you look at a bait, or you look at a rattle trap, and there's a little too much red in it, there's a little too much orange in it, or there's not enough black in it, there's too much blue in it, and it matters to you, if that bothers you, that is going to matter to you.
Because you won't fish that bait.
And you think there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Okay. I do that. To this, even, and all the successful anglers around me do that. I don't like, there's a little too much orange in that. I just don't like it. And it ends, and I say that about the bait, but it's your favorite bait.
It's,
and
it's something that I bring up in every one of these interviews now, and I'm keeping a tally. There has not been one person I've had on yet, including Justin Lucas, including Tyal, who has said that it matters to the fish more than the fisherman,
Yeah. So for me, colors, I typically keep things really, I almost follow I do follow the mantra. I own a bunch of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think that's more than half the fun of being a bass angler is buying stuff.
It really is, unfortunately for our wives.
That's part of that is really part of the fun, is looking at new and different things, and always trying to. We are always, and if you're not, you should always be searching for that next new thing or that edge. That's something that I really pride myself on. I'm always looking to see, I want to try that, or that looks right, or whatever that is. So to answer the color thing, your first question, does it matter more to you than the fishermen, than the fish do? I'd say it's half and half. I mean, I've seen times, especially like on a place like Clear Lake. I mean, I have 100% absolutely seen times when I'm throwing, let's say I'm throwing a chrome and blue trap, and they want ghost minnow, or they want something that looks like a baby perch or a tule perch, and they'll key in on that color. So I have seen that, that go down before. So when I pick colors, it really comes down to whatever the watercolor and time of year is. Those are the two major factors that I'm going to look at first. And as far as colors with plastics, I mean, I'm sure everybody has said the same thing. Green pumpkin fits probably 80% of any waterway you're going to go to.
Yep.
And so there's always some variation off of that, like for me, from, whether it's Delta, Clear Lake, from February to about April, I'm a big black and blue fan.
Okay.
So anything dark like that, I'm a big fan of. And then, I'm getting ready for the MLF Toyota Series coming up here. And, as we get into May and June, you start sprinkling in some, bluegill colors, more red, that kind of stuff. So, but really in that aspect, if you stay, you look at a margarita mutilator, robo worm. I mean, that has probably accounted for more big fish, especially, talking about the co-angler stuff, drop shot and that behind a pro is probably one of the deadliest techniques that has ever come across a co-angler's arsenal. So yeah, that's kind of my thing for color. I always let watercolor dictate where to go. So, if I start off at green pumpkin and the watercolor is dark, then I'm going to go to darker colors. Like I said, I'm going to go to a black and blue. I'm going to go to a hematoma and a big bite bait. You're going to go to those, gravitate toward those darker colors. And then if the water starts getting more clear, then you lighten up from green pumpkin. And, what's light from green pumpkin would be, like maybe a green pumpkin black flake or a watermelon, so you just kind of go based on what you see.
No, it's a great breakdown, and it's something that I ask. Sometimes I get very, very simple answers, and Ken, you gave us a really good one, a really detailed one. So I appreciate that as well. There definitely are times where the colors do matter big time, but I think when we're sitting on Tackle Warehouse or we're inside Bass Pro or wherever we're at,
right.
I think sometimes it's just, that looks nice. I'll go ahead and pick that up.
Yeah, and I mean, I've picked stuff up before and bought it in bulk and used it, and same motto: if it matters to you, it matters. And I throw it for a little while, and I'm like, dude, I can't get bit on it. I don't like it, and
that's it.
It goes in a box to give away to some high school kids.
That's it. Well, and at least you're helping those high school kids fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ken, thank you so much for coming on, man, and good luck this season. I hope you do well. The Apex is a cool tournament. I'm following it closely. I know a lot of guys here on the West Coast are, so good luck this year.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
private anglers, we strive for constant improvement. But constant improvement requires constant measurement.
Get in the boat.
Capture every detail of every catch with a click of a button. Mark editable waypoints with a double click. The Bullseye from Angler is a weather and waterproof Bluetooth button that pairs with the free Angler fishing app to create the most powerful and effortless fishing intelligence in the world.
So much great insight from Ken here. We really appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for coming on. I hope that this interview in particular helps those guys out there that maybe are fishing some of the smaller tournaments. Maybe they're thinking about trying to move up and try something a little bit more competitive, a little more high stakes, if you will. You can't really grow in anything unless you do something and you go out that you're uncomfortable with. So take that leap, and hopefully it not only makes you a better tournament angler, but just a more well-rounded angler, and you have a lot of fun doing it, right? So I think that there's some great information here that will help guys just have more fun when they're out tournament angling, because that's what this is all about, right? At least it should be. Man, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to hear from you if you did. If you have someone you'd like to have on, I'll do my best to try to have them on. If you have a question you'd like answered or a topic that you'd like us to discuss, please reach out. My email is podcast@bassmag.com, or you can just message me at the Bass Angler Magazine Instagram at bass_angler_mag. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I love talking to people about this stuff. This is why I do this, and it could be anybody. So hit me up. Let's talk and let's see if we can come up with something and get your questions answered. Subscribing, rating, and commenting on iTunes really helps the show grow. And we need that as we've just started. So I encourage all of you to do that. If you have the time and you enjoy what we're putting out here, it really helps. You can also find this show on Spotify or Pandora if you prefer those platforms. And you can do the same thing there. Subscribe, comment, rate, anything you can do really. Share it on Instagram when we put it on Instagram or on Facebook. I'm mainly on Instagram when it comes to the podcast. Somebody else is dealing with the Facebook, but these will be posted on Facebook as well. So you can go there. Anything you can do really to get the word out is much appreciated. So as always, thanks so much for tuning in and telling your fishing buddies about us. Take care. Catch a big one. I'll catch you next time.